I want to ask why there has been such a serious delay in legislating to provide for safe access zones around healthcare providers and maternity hospitals where abortions are being carried out. This legislation has long been promised by government. Indeed, then Minister for Health Simon Harris promised this back in 2018 when we were debating the abortion legislation. And a private member's bill to provide for safe access zones to protect women and healthcare staff is being debated at committee stage in government time in the Seanad tomorrow. But I am asking why the government will not simply bring forward that legislation further. I'm glad it's giving government time, but I understand from the spring legislative programme that the government still intends to bring forward its own legislation, rather than allowing this private member's bill, which has cross-party support, the support of doctors, healthcare providers, groups like Together for Safety and other advocacy groups, why we can't simply see that bill brought forward. And I should say an extremely troubling report from Together for Safety that anti-choice activists have been obtaining information about dates and times of appointments or terminations so that they can harass women. This is a very serious report, and I want to raise with you again the urgency of providing for this important legislation to protect women and healthcare providers. And I should say an extremely troubling report from Together for Safety that anti-choice activists have been obtaining information about dates and times of appointments or terminations so that they can harass women, harass women, harass women, harass women, harass women.
Wow! Now that's what I call Dáil privilege. That was Labour's Ivana Bacik TD in the Dáil having a rant in advance of the Shannon debate on a bill to have safe access zones established outside the buildings of abortion providers. One such abortion provider is University Maternity Hospital, Limerick. Yes, you heard that right, a maternity hospital where unborn babies are killed by choice. Bacik cites an unpublished report by the Limerick-based group Together for Safety, in which it is claimed that regular anti-choice protests are taking place outside the hospital because protesters have inside information from hospital staff about abortions when they are taking place, and that women going for their abortions are being abused and harassed by the protesters. Shocking stuff indeed. And if that's what's going on, then something should definitely be done about it. Firstly, I think it should be stated that abuse and harassment of anyone for any reason is wrong and should be reported immediately to the Gardaí. And the good news for Bacik is that all public spaces are already safety zones, as abuse and harassment is already illegal. Not wanting Labour to steal all the limelight, Limerick-based Sinn Féin Senator Martin Gavin also got in the act in advance of the Senate debate on so-called safety zones, saying that he was very proud to facilitate the advance of this bill, which has been carefully drafted by Together for Safety, a national campaign group based in Limerick. He even managed to get a bit of coverage on Live 95 FM. Here's what he had to say during the Senate debate.
Protests are now coinciding with the exact times of the appointments that women and pregnant people have in relation to their own private medical business, but in relation to business that often relates to terminations. Now that is really disturbing. And clearly it shows there's information from within the hospital being shared with these protesters.
Now, this so-called report by Together for Safety is nowhere to be found online. And the only thing that I could find was a press release from last year that claimed that the maternity hospital wasn't taking their complaints seriously. Evie Murphy, one of the co-conveners of Together for Safety, claims that she has collected complaints about anti-choice protests from local residents, women and pregnant people attending the hospital, as well as from local businesses and the general public. And she accuses the hospital of minimising the issue when they refuse to just simply take her word for it. The other co-convener, Karen Sagrew, claims to have been contacted by hospital staff that were upset by the protesters. She claims that they were afraid to make complaints to their employer in case they would lose their job. She condemns the hospital for having a Catholic ethos, funny sort of Catholic ethos that provides elective abortion services, and scolds the hospital for not believing their complaints. That press release made it onto the front page of the Limerick Post last December, courtesy of their uninvestigative reporter, Bernie English, who was happy to repeat all their unsubstantiated claims. And once again, courtesy of Bernie English, their current claims are headline news. Here, Evie Murphy claims that confidential information is being leaked to protesters and that some protesters have tried to engage with or talk to women. Others have been very abusive. It's terribly distressing for women accessing services, she claims. I was first alerted to this unpublished Together for Safety report on Tuesday the 8th of February 2022 when I was contacted by the pro-abortion activist and journalist with the Irish Independent, Ellen Coyne. Coyne had contacted me in my capacity as spokesperson for Pro-Life Action Now, and she wanted to know if I was involved in the protests, or if I knew who was organising them. She informed me that despite her best efforts, she could not find any evidence that the hospital had shared confidential information. I told Miss Coyne that the only protest outside the maternity hospital that I was aware of was the one that took place last July to protest the lockdown restrictions that forced expectant mothers to attend appointments alone and without their partners. I told her that I couldn't find any photographic evidence online showing pro-life protesters outside any of the Limerick hospitals. Coyne looked into it and informed me that she couldn't find any photographic evidence either, saying that Together for Safety had used a stock image photo of an unrelated protest with their press release. Indeed, the only photo that Together for Safety offer as proof is from last year, and it features 4 women standing outside the maternity hospital. One of the women has a Love Both umbrella, and 3 of the women look like they are engaging with or talking to the woman whose face is blurred out. Well, it all seemed a little suspect to me, so I decided to conduct my own fringe investigation to see if I could catch these abusive protesters in the act. You know, to see if I could actually produce that missing evidence. I began my surveillance of the maternity hospital early on Wednesday morning, and between the hours of 9 and 10, I noticed what Together for Safety might call some highly suspicious activity. The 2 suspects were making their way towards the hospital entrance, and one of them was brandishing what Labour's Ivana Bacik and Sinn Féin's Martin Gavin might call a deadly weapon, no doubt swinging around to try and intimidate the pregnant people as they tried to make their way to the hospital. Should I call the guards, or should I get in touch with Together for Safety? I didn't know what to do. I was so paralysed with fear. I just stood there and watched. Oh no! I think they're going to attack that woman! Whew, she got away. Looks like they might be doubling back to make an attack. Too risky, so they give her a pass and continue on their way to find someone else to harass and intimidate. Oh no, I think they see me! Won't someone please call Together for Safety and get me out of here? As they made their way around the corner and away from me, I breathed a sigh of relief. It was all quiet for about an hour. Then, between 11 a.m. and 12 p.m, it all kicked off again. Just look at these 2 shady characters, both in disguise, trying to hide their identity, and brandishing the same weapons. Look at this, they're using secret code to communicate. Having witnessed the morning's carnage, I knew what to expect. Was this one of the pregnant people? Are they going to attack her? No. She had a lucky escape. Just like the previous protesters, they doubled back and scanned the area looking for pregnant people to harass and intimidate. Now before you say, "Cathal, you coward, you just stood there and watched," you'll be glad to know that I overcame my fear just in time. But when I went to call Together for Safety, I discovered I had no credit, so I did the next best thing and ran after those women and confronted them before they could flee the scene. It was time for some answers and to find out what really happened. Now, you're playing the rosary outside the maternity hospital.
Yes.
Is this a protest?
Absolutely not. Mita and I come every week on a Wednesday, as it turned out now. But we come here in solidarity with the unborn whose lives have been taken, you know. So that's what we come, and we just pray the rosary, and just for intercession for those who are being killed.
Yes.
We also intercede for mothers. Sometimes they come and ask us for prayer. And sometimes the fathers who are expecting babies in the maternity.
And
If they ask us, we pray with them or pray for them. We pray for them anyway. We pray for all the babies who are going to be born.
And do you ask, did you approach people as you're going around with the rosary?
Never.
When you're
No,
praying, do you
we
approach
don't.
people?
And
Or?
actually, as people pass us, we tend to quieten. I mean, we're not in any way shouting out prayers or anything, but we believe in prayer, and for that reason we just walk around the hospital, you know, in solidarity. But sometimes people have seen us, and I don't know, I think it's happened more to you than to me even.
Yeah, well, I've seen like some people upset, a young couple upset and really crying bitterly, and we just asked them could we do anything or help, and we would like a prayer, and they said yes they would, and you know, they're worrying about their baby, that maybe there's some problem or something in the pregnancy or whatever, and they're always so happy that we pray for them or with them.
Yeah, it's nothing to do with abortion, that,
And,
that people would.
I mean, we believe very much in the right to life as well for every baby.
Everybody, yeah.
The accusation has been made that you have inside information, that you're out here protesting, knowing that there's abortions going on inside, that apparently they only take place at certain times of the week, and that you have prior knowledge, is what she's saying.
Well, I personally have absolutely no knowledge of when abortions are taking place, and I haven't been in touch with any staff member. I don't think you have either.
No, I
So
haven't.
we're not aware of that. I mean, I don't know. I honestly don't know.
But I would like to say this is a hospital approved for abortion, so therefore we know abortions are taking place here. Otherwise,
Exactly.
you know, what was the referendum? And we know the hospitals that have been approved for abortion. That's a fact. Also, there's many patients coming in here to have their babies who are very unhappy that they have to have a baby now because mothers of the babies being killed. You know, and they're not happy about that,
Yeah.
and they do not like to even have a doctor who's killing babies to perform their, deliver their babies.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it must be remembered too, Colin, you know this, that the hospital said they had no problem with the people walking up and down, like that they weren't aware of any protest and there was nobody being harassed or anything.
Yeah.
And we know 100% that is true. But maybe there are a few local politicians who are hoping to create a storm in a teacup for their own reasons. For example, we heard that I'm not even 100% sure this is true, that the council voted against, in favour of a protective zone around the hospital. But you must remember what way a given councillor puts the question to the council. Perhaps they can say, are you in favour of patients being harassed outside the hospital? We wouldn't be in favour of patients being
harass
harassed.
anyone.
We don't dream of it.
We
no
don't
matter
ask
what.
anyone where they're going, what they're going
and we
in
stand
why
for the
they're going.
welfare of all those people, even those who are contemplating abortion. I mean, given the atmosphere that's surrounding them now, we pray for them that they'll come to a good conclusion, because many of those things happen and there's huge regret and huge mental repercussions for people later on. So we stand for life, for goodness for everybody, and for well-being for everybody. So that's why we're here. So it's not very exotic, it's just very plain.
We know that for the, I think, great majority of people who have abortions, totally regret it afterwards. Many of their lives go totally astray afterwards. Between drugs or alcohol, some people even take their own lives. We know all these for a fact. Pray for everyone. We pray for the doctors, everyone who's involved in the abortion, all the people who are in to have their babies. There's lots of people who have difficult pregnancies now and difficult labours and have big worries about the concern of their babies sometimes, about their lives, if they'll be born healthy or if they'll be born too early to survive, all kinds of things. this is a normal part of maternity. You know, I've done midwifery. I was a midwife.
That was Antoinette and Meta, two lovely and devout ladies. It really is impossible to imagine how anyone in their right mind could claim to be frightened and intimidated by them as they quietly prayed the rosary while walking around the perimeter of the maternity hospital. I also spoke with Olive and Deirdre. Olive is the woman whose face was blotted out in Together for Safety's one and only photo of what the rabidly pro-abortion group like to call a protest. The photo was taken as all four women were about to start their prayers around the hospital perimeter. The two women wearing the Lady of Guadalupe jackets are nuns from the Philippines that were visiting Limerick last summer. Olive and Deirdre, you've both seen the statements made by Together for Safety, claiming that you're protesters protesting outside the maternity hospital, that you have inside information that women are having abortions when the abortions are taking place, and that you're out here to harass them as they go into the building. Are you protesting? What exactly are you doing here?
First and foremost, we most certainly are not protesting. We're here to support any women who are going into this hospital having their babies, or if they're having an abortion. We're not supporting them having an abortion, obviously. We're praying that they might change their minds, but we are not protesting. We're not stopping them. They have their right, and we certainly are not stopping them going in. We have been doing this now for the last couple of years. We come on a Wednesday, but other people come different days, so it's not particularly on a Wednesday. We've just got a very strong conviction that prayer will help, and that's what we're doing here. We're committed Catholics, and that's what we're doing. We're praying through the intercession of Our Lady. We're praying the Rosary, and we are hoping that through Our Blessed Lady that they will change their minds.
And of course, you've been doing this long before there was ever abortions carried out in the hospital.
Oh, absolutely. Even before the Eighth Amendment, but of course, since the Eighth Amendment was eradicated and the right to life of the unborn child was taken away, you see, it's much easier for people now. I mean, they can get pills from the doctor, they can do home abortions, and of course, in the last 2 years, since the actual Eighth Amendment was taken away, there have been over 16,000 abortions in Ireland, which is absolutely appalling. No, we don't. We just pray quietly. We're not silent, but we're quiet, and we're not hiding the fact that we're praying, but we are, not certainly approaching anybody.
Okay.
Yeah, and just there, as Olive was saying, like even sometimes Cathal people will actually stop and say good, and they're very affirmative towards us in what we're doing, and it's certainly not offensive to anybody. We're certainly not judging anybody. All we're interested in is the welfare and the well-being of every woman who comes through these gates.
And of course, you yourself worked as a midwife, is that right?
Yes, and I actually worked here as well. I worked here in this hospital for 5 years. When there was long before this new situation ever arrived here, and our whole training and our mindset was all to protect life and to do the best you could for every mother and every baby, and that's all. That's all we want. We're not here to judge anybody or to condemn anybody. We're not here for any of that. We don't say anything to the people going in. We're not in your face doing anything. We're quietly praying. We go around the hospital and quietly pray. But sometimes if people, might come up to us, and as I say, they're very supportive, and will say things, and we have had nobody to say you shouldn't be here, because what we're doing, we're basically walking around. We're not stopping anybody. So that is false.
Yeah.
What was being said is definitely, it is absolutely false.
It's outright lies. It's outright lies.
It is.
Outright lies.
In fact, people sometimes ask us, would we pray for the women inside, or a mother might come and say, would you pray for my daughter? She's having her baby today. That sort of thing, a very supportive thing like that.
Yeah.
So that's just a little extra aside.
So listen, thanks very much for talking to me. That's kind of shows that there's no protests. You're not protesters like Together for Safety portrayed you in their Twitter feed and in their press statement, where they actually used stock footage of another protest trying to claim it was going on outside the hospital. This is the level of the lies that they're getting into. Councillor Liza Donovan, of course, and Councillor Conor Sheehan and the council, of course, have been backing safety zones based on those lies.
Well, you do know that the management of the hospital here have actually come out and said that they had no complaints of any description of harassment of anybody coming. I mean, they actually came out and said that publicly in the paper. So they are saying that.
Oh, they're saying that, but of course the Limerick Post put it on the front page there before Christmas, saying that the hospital had refused to respond.
Well, that's not true.
That's not true.
That's not true, yeah. So look at, it's nice to talk to you, Cathal, and we appreciate that you're taking the time to do this in the interests of unborn babies and their mothers. And thanks very much.
Not at all. Thank you for talking to me.
Okay.
You're welcome,
Go to meet Margaret.
Na haber.
Okay. Slán. So there you have it. There was absolutely no intimidation and no harassment of women going on outside the maternity hospital in Limerick. Just kind and gentle ladies quietly praying the Holy Rosary for the well-being of mothers and their babies. And for the doctors, midwives and staff members as well. The accusations and claims of Together for Safety are nothing more than outright lies. Together for Safety commissioned and drafted the Safe Access to Termination and Pregnancy Services Bill 2021, and it was first introduced in the Shannon last year by Sinn Féin's Limerick-based Senator Paul Gavin. Their bill has been co-signed by other senators, receiving cross-party support from members of Sinn Féin, the Labour Party, the Green Party, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and some independents. The basis for this cross-party support comes from a report that Together for Safety had issued, which supposedly details the harassment and intimidation of pregnant people trying to access abortion services. The same report that Labour's Ivana Bacik TD had referred to in the Dáil in advance of the Shannon debate. As I said earlier, this report is nowhere to be found online, and it would seem to have only been sent to selected journalists and politicians. But what can be found is the method they used to collect the complaints to generate their report. They used a Google survey form, a form where complaints could be submitted anonymously and where people were not required to give their name or contact information for verification. Basically, anyone could fill out the form and say whatever they liked. For all we know, the Together for Safety crew could have made up every single one of the submissions that they claimed to have received. How could anyone reasonably expect the maternity hospital to take these anonymous complaints seriously when they are being submitted by a politically charged third party and not directly by members of the public? Indeed, the hospital stated last December that they have not received any official complaints from their service users, their partners or accompanying support persons, or their staff about protests outside the hospital. As David Raleigh reported in the Limerick Post, the hospital had received complaints from a third party, but said they were not aware of any such protests taking place. Certainly not intimidatory. There might have been one or two women outside the hospital saying prayers with rosary beads occasionally, but they would only be there for a few minutes and then leave. They were certainly not intimidating anyone, a spokesperson for the hospital said. The Gardaí haven't received any complaints either, not even third-party complaints. In fact, the Garda Commissioner, Drew Harris, has stated that existing laws are adequate to deal with the abortion protests. Garda Commissioner Harris said that the introduction of such safe access legislation would be redundant because of the existence of current laws and the fact that no incidence of criminality has been reported or observed. He said there was no evidence to suggest that there is threatening, abusive or insulting behaviour directed towards persons utilising such services. So why the fevered rush to introduce new laws? And given that there isn't any evidence of intimidation or harassment taking place, what possible other motive might there be? Perhaps if we take a closer look at some of the activists of Together for Safety, we might find an answer. Meet Together for Safety's Central Planning Committee. Here they are, dressed up as witches for Halloween. On the left, we have Together for Safety co-convener Karen Segru, and on the right is co-convener Evie Murphy. And sandwiched in between the two of them is the Social Democrats councillor Elisa O'Donovan. When Murphy and Segrew are not busy with their co-convening of Together for Safety, they double up as Councillor O'Donovan's election team. Along with Labour's Councillor Conor Sheehan, O'Donovan is one of the main promoters of Together for Safety's campaign on Limerick City and County Council. Here she is last July keeping the spirit of Halloween alive by wearing a similar outfit to express her support for Sheehan's motion for safe zones to prevent what he called anti-abortion protests outside Limerick's Maternity Hospital and other abortion providers. Gloating over his success in getting his motion passed, Sheehan told the Irish Examiner that pregnant people have a right to access whatever healthcare they need in privacy, dignity and respect. They should not have to pass or walk through these protests, which are designed to intimidate and frighten people. Remember now, he was actually referring to Antoinette, Mita, Olive and Deirdre when he said that. Sheehan is aware that the only activity outside the hospital is these women praying the rosary. Sheehan has a great disdain for the Holy Rosary and a tendency to misgender people. Last December, he told the Limerick Post, "You have groups of people walking, mainly groups of men. They were chanting and praying. It was very, very intimidating for people who had to pass through that." What a shameless liar he is. On a side note, Sheehan still lives at home with his mammy and daddy. Last May, the 29-year-old single white male complained to the Irish Examiner about his struggle to buy his own house. Perhaps if the Labour working class hero was open to living in my Ross or Ballinanty, 2 estates in his local electoral area that he seems to have forgotten completely about, he wouldn't be getting outbid every time. Maybe the ladies might pray for him to be a bit more open-minded. Regular viewers of my content will already be familiar with O'Donovan's disdain for the Holy Rosary, but let's have a quick recap for those who are not. Here she is last year on Palm Sunday trying to disrupt the Rosary being said by the congregants of the Sacred Heart Church. The hypocrite had claimed that it was a breach of lockdown restrictions, while she herself had attended numerous illegal gatherings in contravention of the government's COVID regulations, such as a crowded Black Lives Matter protest in Arthur's Quay Park and a jam-packed pro-pedestrianisation protest on Catherine Street. She would later claim that she had been harassed and intimidated by the congregants and by my filming of her unhinged antics. The week before that, she had claimed that her constituents had been harassed and intimidated by the congregants. Let's have a quick reminder of what that so-called harassment and intimidation actually looked like. Now, we all know what she thinks about the C word, but what did she think about the songs her constituents blared to disrupt the Rosary? "I'm sorry this is happening on your doorstep. Love the tunes," says O'Donovan in a tweet supporting their appalling antisocial behaviour with the little devil horns looking hand gesture emoji to show solidarity with their outrageous sectarianism. By the way, that song, if you could even call it a song, that song with the C word is called Blow Your Trumpets Gabriel, and it's by a band from Poland of some notoriety called Behemoth. Yes, a death metal band named after a monstrous biblical demon, a band that worships Satan as their god. You could not make it up. The lyrics are antithetical to Christian beliefs, and the track was obviously deliberately chosen to mock and to try and provoke a reaction from the congregants, who, though rightly repulsed by the satanic music being blared at them, had enough dignity and composure to ignore these troubled young ladies and continue with their prayers. Was this disgraceful act of sectarian hatred motivated by their own anti-Christian and satanic religious views, or did someone else put them up to it and tell them what songs to play? The 2 women seem to have been grossly misinformed about the legalities of filming in public and seem to be under the impression that their antics would never see the light of day. Councillor O'Donovan seemed to be under the same impression when she let loose on Palm Sunday. So as you can see, Councillor O'Donovan is no stranger to telling lies. And as I have pointed out in previous videos, Councillor O'Donovan, while claiming to be an atheist, has some unusual religious views of her own. She believes in the supernatural and likes to self-identify as a witch. The complete set of videos in the Councillor Eliza O'Donovan Chronicles are available to watch online. Links are in the description. Having incessantly harped on about protesters' intimidation and harassment in their Together for Safety press release last December, Evie Murphy eventually gives us a clue at the end about what they are really upset about, stating that while some people working in the hospital might not view the occasional person outside the hospital saying prayers with rosary beads as intimidating, we would argue that even one person being negatively impacted by this sort of anti-abortion activity is one too many. You have to wonder what kind of person would view rosary beads as intimidating. A casual glance at Murphy's various social media accounts, where she goes with the handle Evie Ni, gives us some insight into her religious views. She has an enthusiasm for tarot and believes that she can predict people's future, but is not sure if she can do it online or needs to be there in person for her powers to work. I wonder what she predicted for Sue Grew and O'Donovan. She has a particular taste in art. No images of the Blessed Virgin Mary to be found here, I can tell you. And she has a fondness for Ouija boards, and has attended gatherings organised through the Limerick-based Black Cat Spirit Healing Facebook page, a self-identifying hedge witch who holds regular witch gatherings in Limerick city centre and whose Facebook page is a safe space for witches of colour, male witches, LGBTQ PIAD plus witches, non-religious witches, beginner witches, plus-size witches, disabled witches, and witches suffering from mental illness. Murphy's idea of a great holiday is visiting Witch House in Salem, Massachusetts, USA. Here's Murphy giving some advice on healing crystals. And here she is giving advice to another woman on burning incense. A woman who, by the way, self-identifies as a witch and claims to be descended from a long line of Limerick witches. Clearly, Murphy has some very strong religious beliefs. But what about the other co-convener, Karen Sue Grew? Is she a full-time witch larper? Or does she just like dressing up as one for Halloween? Well, you don't have to go too far back on her Twitter feed to find some evidence of supernatural belief. Here she is on St. Bridget's Day, sharing a photo of a scarf that she has wrapped around a shrub in her front garden, telling us that according to the best #Limerick witches, this scarf now has the power to give abortions to anyone that wants one, take down the patriarchy, and cure sore throats. #Imbolg, #abortionist healthcare, #free, safe, legal, local. For those of you that don't know, Imbolg is a Celtic pagan 2-day festival that is still celebrated by Irish witches today. But instead of honouring the Christian 6th century Saint Bridget, the matron saint of Ireland, they make offerings to the pagan goddess Bridget. And if they're in a coven, they might dance around a bonfire, and maybe even convene a meeting to go for a naked group swim. With its origins in Gaelic Irish, Imbolg means in the belly, and for good witches it is a celebration of life, marking the end of winter and the beginning of spring. All is pregnant and expectant, and only just visible, if at all, like the gentle curve of a just showing pregnancy. It is the promise of renewal, of hidden potential, of earth awakening and life force stirring. Evil witches, on the other hand, want the winter to continue, and for that life force to be sacrificed. Abortion is not a life-affirming act, and it really is quite sinister to try and associate it with Imbolg. One of her pals also sticks a scarf on a hedge. To smite people, she says. To smite men, Sue Grew corrects her. I feel the entire patriarchy is built around not letting women use their magic, she whines. Now, I'm not calling these women evil witches, and they certainly get very upset if you make the slightest suggestion that they might be witches, even though they self-identify as witches on many of their social media posts. But what better way to celebrate a dark Imbolg than a visit to Shannon Éireann to push your unnecessary legislation based on your bogus report? And why wouldn't you be profoundly happy when your lies have paid dividends, and where the closest thing to evidence that you have presented in public is a photograph of 4 women outside the maternity hospital about to set off on their rosary walk around the perimeter? Incidentally, I should have mentioned earlier that the woman standing next to Olive holding the Love Both umbrella is actually Deirdre, and she told me off camera that the only reason she had the umbrella up was because it was raining that day. Love Both was one of the pro-life campaigns during the 2018 abortion referendum, and the Together for Safety gang find that umbrella to be very upsetting and offensive. Whereas they think these umbrellas are fine and dandy. "Oh yes," says Segru. "Shut up and take my money," says Murphy. So what is the point of pushing for legislation when harassment and intimidation is already illegal, and when the Gardaí say they don't need new laws to deal with such incidents, when and if they ever occur outside hospitals and clinics? Could it be that just like those 4 devout Limerick ladies praying the rosary outside the maternity hospital, seeking divine intervention through the intercession of Our Lady to protect expectant mothers and their babies, could it be that the 3 LARPing witches of Together for Safety actually believe in the power of prayer, and that is why they want to put a stop to it? Well, they certainly worked their magic on the Seanad, as most of those present spoke in favour of the legislation. Fianna Fáil's Minister for Health, Stephen Donnelly TD, attended the debate and said he was in favour of such legislation. Sinn Féin's Senator Paul Gavin kicked off proceedings by wilfully regurgitating the lies of Together for Safety.
I'm going to be very brief because, as you say, we have just a couple of hours to work this particular legislation through committee stage. But I want to be clear, we need this legislation without further delay because women and pregnant people are entitled to access essential health care, including access to termination of pregnancy services in privacy and dignity without being subject to intimidation, harassment and the subtle but deliberate chill effect that anti-choice protesters are bringing to hospitals, family planning and GP settings across the state right now. And I know, Minister, you were informed in the last week of a very disturbing new development which is happening in my home city of Limerick, whereby the timings of these anti-choice protests are now coinciding with the timings of appointments for terminations. It's clear from a number of people who've spoken to Together for Safety that information is being leaked, that these protesters are now targeting women and pregnant people as they arrive for their terminations. It is absolutely disgraceful, and it speaks to the urgency in relation to this bill. We introduced this bill at second stage 3 months ago. I was delighted and appreciate the fact that the Minister allowed the bill to pass. And I took note of the fact that he said that we're all on the same page here, and I believe we are, Minister. But what's important now is to move this bill further forward.
That's right, mate. It's all about protecting the pregnant people, innit? Chucky or law. Where do the Shinners get this guy? Unbelievable. Only one senator stood for truth during the debate, and he was heckled and mocked for his valiant efforts. Independent Senator Ronan Mullen refuted the lies and defended the Limerick women that prayed the rosary outside the maternity hospital.
Where people witness to the rights of the unborn in circumstances where facilities, where they are near facilities where such procedures as violate and deny those rights take place from time to time. Because when the bill was first introduced in November, part of the justification cited for its introduction was supposedly, quote, intimidatory protests outside abortion facilities in Limerick City, instigated, it was claimed, by abortion opponents. And my colleague, with whom I get on very well personally, Senator Gavin, repeated that allegation and more today when he talked about people targeting people who would be going into facilities to access abortion. Everything he says and everything behind this Sinn Féin bill is designed to suggest that there are some very unpleasant people out there doing some very unpleasant things. When in fact, what we are talking about are decent people. One of them I know to be, I'm not referring to Limerick in particular, to be a relative of a government minister, who are Democrats, who in many cases are religious people. I don't make religious arguments around abortion generally because I think it's a human rights issue for people of all faiths and none. But there are many who invoke the power of prayer in private and quiet ways and in discreet ways to hope for a better outcome. And those quiet, mainly elderly people who hardly raise their voices are being portrayed here as menacing, targeting types. And I have to say, Senator Gavin, that it's one thing to say that on the basis of information you believe is correct. But a month after you said what you said, in December 2021, the University of Limerick Hospitals Group issued a public statement confirming that they had received no complaints about protests outside the hospital. The hospital spokesperson acknowledged that they were, and I quote, satisfied that there is no issue with regard to safety of access at University Maternity Hospital, Limerick. So not just the Garda Commissioner, but Limerick. Now, I would have expected then that Senator Gavin would correct the record. But I recall no effort being made to correct the record by Senator Gavin or others who disseminated the false and unfounded allegations against, let's call them, pro-life supporters in the first instance. And I wonder, is that because it suits a political agenda to allow a lie to go halfway around the world because the truth still won't have its boots on? And so when I hear further claims being made, suggestive of some kind of collusion, on the basis, suggestive that people's personal data is somehow being leaked to those who have concern about abortions, I am inclined to disbelieve those who make those claims.
He asked their accusers to produce the evidence and questioned if those senators were willfully believing the unfounded claims of Together for Safety to push an agenda. Sinn Féin's Senator Lynn Boylan didn't care if they were only praying.
Listen to what women are telling you. They feel intimidated. So you can refer to them as decent people, as mainly elderly people. You can say all of that. The realities are that they're reflecting in quiet prayer. It doesn't matter what they're doing. What they are doing, the feeling of the person who they're doing it to is one of intimidation. And I'm asking you to reflect on that and listen to what the experience of those who are experiencing it are telling you.
Boylan even laughs at her own nonsense. Well, at least she said women and not pregnant people. I'd say she wouldn't have been able to contain her laughter if she had. You would imagine, though, that being a member of Sinn Féin, that Boylan would be an expert on what actual intimidation looks like. But apparently she would have us believe that if women say they feel intimidated, then they are intimidated, and we should listen to them when they tell us that. I'm sure we all would listen to them if they actually existed. And if feelings are all that matter to Boylan, then won't she please listen to the people that suffer from trichophobia? Your hair is a fright, Boylan. They'd be terrified by you. Won't you please sort it out before one of them gets triggered? All of these senators spoke in support of Together for Safety's bill. But perhaps the most beguiled of all was Fine Gael's Senator Martin Conway, who actually conceded that public prayer was the target when he said of the devout Limerick women that their mere presence, be it in quiet reflection, prayer or whatever it may be, is not appropriate. People are intimidated in many different ways. I suggest it is a form of intimidation. Yes, public prayer is the real target. The Holy Rosary is very problematic for these people. Together for Sectarianism would be a more appropriate name for them. If they were truly Together for Safety, then they would take the advice of Senator Conway when he said, if there was activity outside the hospital, the more appropriate people to contact on that issue would have been the Gardaí. Nowhere on Together for Safety's website and nowhere in their campaign have they advised the people that they claim to be concerned about, the people that they claim to have endured intimidation and harassment outside the maternity hospital. Nowhere are they advised to make a formal complaint to the Gardaí. They want people to complain to the Minister for Health, councillors, TDs, report Together for Safety through their anonymous Google survey or via social media, tell everyone and anyone, except for the Gardaí. Senator Conway will be delighted to learn that I have been reliably informed that the Limerick Gardaí have received absolutely no complaints regarding the alleged intimidation and harassment of women outside the maternity hospital. Of course, a formal complaint to the Gardaí would mean that the matter would have to be investigated, and any investigation of Together for Safety's claims would undoubtedly prove their claims to be false, and making false statements to the Gardaí is a criminal offence. The full debate is available to watch online on the Oireachtas website. I'll leave a link in the description. As I said at the start, I was first alerted to this unpublished Together for Safety report on Tuesday the 8th of February when I was contacted by the pro-abortion activist journalist Ellen Coyne. Coyne wanted me to put her in contact with the women that pray the rosary, but refused to tell me what group had issued the report, and stated that she wasn't going to do a story unless she could make their false claims stand up. I subsequently discovered that the group was Together for Safety, and I replied that there is a story in exposing liars. They've already managed to get onto the front page of the Limerick Post. I suppose it's up to you whether you can separate the activist from the journalist and see the merits of such a story. As Coyne had asked to speak with the women directly and off the record, I made inquiries and informed her that 2 of the women were willing to speak with her on the record. I asked her if it was okay to give them her number, and she agreed. Coyne has a reputation in pro-life circles for being extremely biased and unfair, but seeing as how she seemed to be making a genuine effort to reach out, Antoinette and Olive had initially agreed to speak with her. I had advised both women to record their interviews, as I was of the opinion that Coyne could not be trusted. For activist journalists such as Coyne, their cause is more important than the truth, and if the truth doesn't serve their cause, then the truth must be buried. After I had conducted my interviews with Antoinette and Mita in the morning, and Olive and Deirdre in the afternoon, both of the women had changed their minds about talking to Coyne. If she wasn't going to do a story unless it supported Together for Safety's claims, then what was the point in talking to her, they reasoned. But then I was contacted by Coyne again, this time to let me know about Labour's Ivana Bacik's abuse of Dáil privilege to give credence to Together for Safety's bogus report and unverified claims. Coyne claimed that she wanted to give the women a right to reply, a chance to give their side of the story. I agreed to pass her message on to them. Note her consistent use of the term pro-life as opposed to anti-abortion, as if to assure the women that they will be given a fair hearing. Coyne acknowledges that the women do not consider themselves to be protesters, and says she is eager to give the women a right to respond to the accusations that have been made in the Dáil about them getting the times and dates of when abortions are being carried out in the hospital. Antoinette decided she would give her a call and speak to her on the record.
Hello?
Hi, that's Ellen now.
It's Ellen Coyne, yeah.
Yeah, Ellen, this is me, Antoinette now, and we can put this to sleep for once and for all. Okay, are you?
Okay.
You're out of the hospital or whatever now, are you?
Yeah, I'm out now. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah, just fine. So look,
Okay.
let me just say, because I think this phone call should be brief. And what I'd just like to say is, from my point of view, this isn't very complicated at all. So I pray outside the hospital.
Now, you should always assume that when a journalist calls to speak to you on or off the record, that they are probably recording your conversation. And if they are speaking to you on the record, then you can be sure that they are recording you, as they will need to accurately quote what you have said when they are writing up their article.
I just didn't think it was fair if this story was being covered and we weren't hearing from the people who this allegation is being made against. That's all.
Okay, well, if that's all, that's very good of you, Ellen.
I have always advised people that are being interviewed by journalists to record their conversations, so that they can have their own account of what was said. Thankfully, Antoinette took my advice.
You were concerned about contacts in the hospital. I have absolutely no contact in the hospital.
On Friday, the 12th of February, the Irish Independent published Coyne's article, online and in print. The headline makes the bold claim that there is a group preying on maternity unit termination days. A headline that suggests that Coyne had confirmed the days that abortions take place at the maternity hospital. Of course, the term pro-life is nowhere to be seen. Instead, she wrote that anti-abortion campaigners said that divine providence led them to pray outside the hospital on days the terminations were being carried out, before going on to Bacik's false allegations in the Dáil that the women were obtaining inside information from the hospital so they can harass women. Coyne then refers to the women that pray the rosary outside the hospital as the Limerick anti-abortion group, when she knew well that their prayers are not merely focused on abortion, that they have been praying outside the hospital for years, not months, and that they don't consider themselves to be a campaign group. They don't hand out leaflets, they don't issue press releases, they don't wave banners and placards around like Together for Safety do. They just simply pray the rosary outside the hospital for the well-being of mothers and their babies. Coyne then quoted Antoinette as saying, If Wednesdays happens to be the day that they do abortions, then it's divine providence that that's the day that we happen to be there. And I should say, it's a good kind of divine providence. And I have the feeling Wednesday will continue to be the day we are there. Here's what Antoinette actually said.
You were saying that we maybe had inside information, and it brought me back that I said to the lady that I pray with when we walk up and down together, would we change to a Wednesday? Because we used to go, I think we went, I'm not sure, was it a Monday or a Friday or what, but whatever day we had a lot of traffic or something. And then I said, listen, what about a Wednesday? And I generally go to Mass early, and maybe we could go then. And that's how we go on a Wednesday. So if Wednesday happens to be the day when abortions are carried out, I'm afraid you'll have to call it divine providence, because I can put my hand in my heart and say that I knew nothing about it anyway, if that is the given day when abortions are carried out.
Coyne completely omitted the fact that Antoinette had said that she knew nothing about the time and dates of when abortions were taking place. Of course, including that significant bit of information would have ruined Coyne's attempt to imply that Antoinette and the other women had inside information.
I was just wondering, is it recently that you've changed from a Monday to
a Wednesday? Well, let's see now. When did we change? I'd say it's about, would it be maybe September? It could be back in September. You know, I can't remember exactly when. But I think we did go, and I'm not even sure what other day, but I remember there was a lot of traffic and I was often late coming and so on. Really, the date or the time was unrelated. And now I think I have the feeling that Wednesday must be the day when they carry out abortions, but I was unaware of it.
During my unexpected 12-minute phone call from Ellen Coyne, which I recorded, she twice claimed that she had spoken to someone in the hospital and could confirm that demonstrations had taken place outside, but makes no mention of this in her article.
I'm just trying to find out if you yourself have been involved in any of the demonstrations outside the maternity hospital, or if you can direct me to somebody else who has been involved in them so far.
Oh, Ellen Coyne, is it?
Yeah.
Irish Independent. And why would you say there's demonstrations outside the maternity hospital? I'm just curious to know that.
We have pictures of them here.
Have you? I've been looking for pictures myself because I've heard about it, and the maternity hospital themselves said there was actually no one reported anything or any interference with them.
Well, I'll just stop you there. I just spoke to somebody from the hospital who confirmed that they have been happening.
Okay.
No. I was speaking to someone from the hospital who said that there has been a protest. If there's an issue here with, a subjective view about whether something is a protest or a vigil, we can have a long discussion about that at some other point.
The hospital has publicly stated that they are unaware of any protests going on outside, and that they have only ever received unverifiable third-party complaints, and not real complaints from the people who Together for Safety claim are being intimidated and harassed. She also omits those facts from her story, and instead includes the part of the hospital press release where they said that they will support women in making a complaint through their complaints process, so as to infer that the hospital has received complaints when they have not. Coyne couldn't make their false claims stand up, so instead she propped them up with lies of omission and misrepresentations. Coyne was aware that the women were praying, not protesting. She was aware that they did not have inside information, yet she tries her best to give the impression that they did. Naturally, I wasn't going to just sit around and allow her lies to go unchallenged, so I sent the recordings to the online media outlet Gript, and they quickly exposed Coyne's underhanded tactics. Listening back now, it's even more funny to hear Coyne defend her journalistic integrity when she clearly has none.
I understand how if they happen to only be there on days when terminations are apparently scheduled to be carried out.
You have verified that, have you?
No, that's what I'm trying to do now. That's why I'm calling you. Because I'm trying to find out what's going on. Like, this has been brought to the attention of the Department of Health. The hospital are now looking into it, so we're just trying to find out exactly what's going on. The reason I'm calling you is because we would never put something like that in the paper unless we found out it was true.
Really?
And Are you telling me there's something on the Irish Independent right now saying that that is the case?
No, but as a commentary on journalism in general and newspapers, that's exactly what you tend to do, is you tend to run with a story and...
just cut you off right there, because I would not call you giving you a commentary on how to do pro-life activism.
No, not at all.
You can kind of save your views on Irish journalism, because it really is none of my business. I'm literally just trying to do my job. I'm asking you if you have a contact with somebody in the VIGIL group, because I'm doing exactly what you claim that journalists don't do, which is do our research and find out.
And you know what, Ellen, fair play to you, but you came across saying there was a protest, there is confirmation, and then you have pictures to prove it. And I was just curious, because I have been anxious to get a picture of these protests. They don't seem to be anywhere available online. I'll leave a link to my full conversation with Coyne in the description. Although I know that Antoinette has decided to pray for Ellen Coyne to mend her wicked ways, rather than take the Irish Independent to court, I won't be uploading her full conversation with Coyne, just in case she changes her mind and its publication might impact on her chances of winning.
I understand what you're saying, but that allegation is just not true at all.
It's completely false.
Okay. Thank you for your help. Sorry, I wasn't able to get back to you earlier because I couldn't get out of that interview. Once I was in the hospital, I wasn't allowed back out.
Okay.
But thanks for taking the time to get in touch with me anyway.
Okay, no problem. All right, okay. God bless.
There was some good news on Tuesday the 14th of February, St. Valentine's Day, when Grip succeeded in getting the Irish Independent to amend the quote that Coyne had attributed to Antoinette. Grip had reached out directly to the editor of the Irish Independent, Cormac Burke, and they removed the disputed comments nearly in its entirety from the article. However, the Irish Independent told Grip that it stood over the substance of the article, which really speaks volumes about their low standards and complete lack of ethics. Closer to home, and the Limerick Post took a much different approach by doubling down on the lies and rerunning the story with some additions. This time, they reported that protest groups sporting religious paraphernalia and saying prayers regularly gather outside the Ennis Road Hospital and also at the Family Planning Health Clinic on Mallow Street. As we've already seen, the so-called protest outside the Maternity Hospital on the Ennis Road is nothing more than inoffensive and gentle women praying the rosary as they walk the perimeter. The so-called protest outside the Family Planning Clinic on Mallow Street is actually a handful of Franciscan friars praying the rosary on the public path. The Franciscan Friars of the Renewal, also known as the Monks of Myross, have been praying the rosary there since 2008 without incident. However, it was reported by Bernie English, without any verification whatsoever, that members of the pro-life groups have been reported trying to gain access to the Limerick Family Planning Clinic. Her only source for this claim was Together for Safety's co-convener, Evie Murphy. It is widely known in Limerick that the Monks of Myross pray the rosary near the Family Planning Clinic most Saturday mornings, and it is absolutely scandalous to suggest that they might have been involved in any such incident. The friars are known for their charitable works, and in particular, the spiritual healing and renewal that they have brought to the community in Myross. Not content with simply doubling down on lies, Bernie English follows up the very next day with an article that repeated the misquote of Antoinette that the Irish Independent were forced to retract. She begins the article with the outright lie that the women praying the rosary tried to engage with women outside the Maternity Hospital, Limerick. And just in case you didn't know what she looked like, they included a photo of Antoinette. You know, so that people would be able to recognise the accused harasser and intimidator of pregnant people. The hate inspired by the lies told in the Limerick Post article is very evident in the comments section of their Facebook post. Zombie journalism is a term that I use to describe the type of work produced by Bernie English. Little or no research is done before churning out copy and paste articles. At least Ellen Coyne made a bit of an effort when concocting her story. Both women provide a good example of the sad and sorry state of Irish journalism. Both of them should be sacked for this, but things being the way they are, they'll probably win an award. As we have seen from the evidence presented in this video, there is no harassment and intimidation being perpetrated by the women praying outside the Maternity Hospital in Limerick. But that is not to say there is not harassment and intimidation going on. Sir Grew, Murphy and O'Donovan, through their radical organisation Together for Safety, have harassed and intimidated those Catholic grandmothers with their false accusations, inciting hatred towards them by having malicious lies published about these ordinary decent people. And it would seem that these sectarian bigots have more than willing accomplices in the form of the political establishment and the legacy media. They are all in it together. Together for sectarianism, together for slander, together for lies. A big fat political lie to rush through a law that in all probability is unconstitutional, and according to the Gardaí is completely unnecessary, and the only purpose of which seems to be a ban on public prayer. If rosary beads are seen as intimidating outside a hospital, then they are intimidating in any public setting. Make no mistake, this is an attack on public prayer. It is the ideological and spiritual equivalent of pulling down statues and destroying monuments. It is a veiled attack on the nation's history and culture through political lies. Such political lies will be the subject of my next video, so be sure to subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. You won't want to miss it. Of course, regular viewers will have been expecting a different set of scheduled videos. These are still in the pipeline, but are currently on hold as I am working on a feature-length documentary, which I interrupted to make this video. Indeed, you might consider this to be a prologue of sorts, as the rosary outside the maternity hospital is part of it. No doubt the flying monkeys will be winging their way here to try and get this video taken down. So just a reminder before I go, I upload videos to all these platforms. So if it suddenly disappears from one, you will find it on the others. Also, feel free to download and re-upload this video in whole or part. Until the next time, be seeing you.